In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro reaffirmed his government's commitment to sovereignty and regional integration during the closing ceremony of the Greater Caribbean Parliamentarians Meeting for Peace. In Brazil, Favela residents protested to demand justice for the victims of the recent police operation that left more than 120 dead in Rio de Janeiro. And in Mexico, families honor the souls of their loved ones who have passed away with vigils and altars decorated with flowers, food, and photographs. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. South Korea hosts the 32nd Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit with the goal of boosting connectivity and growth in the region. In addition to seeking to strengthen economic cooperation on the slogan Building a Sustainable Tomorrow, the bloc encourages development through innovation. The event was attended by Chinese President Xi Jinping, who affirmed that international economic and trade rules need to be updated in order to reflect changing times and protect the legitimate interests of developing countries. She also highlighted the need to work together to build an open economic environment for the benefit of the region. The occasion was propitious for the approach between China and Japan in a meeting of their leaders who addressed issues of common interest for the benefit of the peoples. Chinese President Xi Jinping expressed his willingness to strengthen a strategic and beneficial relationship with Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi, given that both countries have a great responsibility for peace and prosperity in the region and the world. In addition, Xi Jinping reaffirmed his willingness to maintain communication and promote the development of bilateral relations on the right path. And Chinese President Xi Jinping urged members of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum on Saturday to strengthen cooperation in artificial intelligence, green transition, and social inclusion. Xi proposed the creation of a global organization for cooperation in artificial intelligence with the goal of coordinating strategies, regulations, and technological standards that guarantee the safe, fair, and beneficial use of AI for all of humanity. The Chinese president also highlighted the need to promote digital and green development as drivers of innovation and economic growth, and proposed accelerating cooperation in clean technologies and eco-friendly products. And in other topics, the defense ministers of the member countries of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations reaffirmed their commitment to preserving peace to prevent the region from becoming an area of strategic competition between powers. During his speech to the Assembly, Malaysian Defense Minister Mohammed Khalid Nordin urged Asian nations to work together by committing to defending the spirit of the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation in Southeast Asia. This statement follows remarks by U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, in which he affirmed that he would firmly defend their interests in the Indo-Pacific, which is evidence of his concern about Chinese activities in the South China Sea.
Malaysia welcomes the United States' comprehensive plan to end the conflict in Gaza.
And China launched the Shenzhou-21 crewed spaceship on Friday, sending 3 astronauts to its orbiting space station on a 6-month mission. The spaceship, atop a Long Mark IIF carrier rocket, blasted off at 11:44 p.m. local time from the Yukoman Satellite Launch Center in northwest China. About 10 minutes after the launch, the spaceship separated from the rocket and entered its designated orbit. The astronauts are in good condition. The launch of the Shenzhou-21 crew spaceship was a complete success, according to China Manned Space Agency. Shenzhou-21 is the 37th flight mission of China's manned space program and the 6th manned mission during the application and development stage of the Tiangong space station. The Israeli regime violated once more the ceasefire agreement in the Gaza Strip, killing Palestinian civilians in a new bombing raid. According to Palestinian health authorities, a young man died when Israeli forces bombed his home of Han Yunis, while another died from injuries sustained in an Israeli airstrike. In addition, the authorities announced the death of a citizen and the injuries of his brother from bullets fired by the occupation forces east of Gaza City, bringing the death toll to 3. The Zionist army carried out demolition operations on citizens' homes east of Gaza City and Han Yunis, where explosions were also heard. And Israel released and handed over to the International Committee of the Red Cross about 30 Palestinian bodies with signs of torture. Medical sources in the Gaza Strip reported that the bodies were delivered by the Israeli occupation through the Red Cross. They also stated that this is the 5th batch of Palestinian bodies released since the ceasefire came into effect on October 11, 2025. Moreover, they asserted that most of the bodies showed signs of torture, such as burns and execution, and some even had their hands tied and their eyes blindfolded. Others were unrecognizable. And the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East continues to deliver humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. The organization emphasized that its facilities in Gaza, such as schools and shelters, continue to operate to help families displaced from their homes by the Israeli siege. It also emphasized that its teams of social workers continue to provide protection, psychosocial support, and assistance to help affected residents rebuild their lives with dignity. More than 12,000 UNRWA employees in the Palestinian enclave work daily in education, medical care, and the delivery of humanitarian aid to the displaced. We now have a first break coming up. Remember, you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. I'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro reaffirmed his government's commitment to sovereignty and regional integration during the closing ceremony of the Greater Caribbean Parliamentarian Meeting for Peace. During the event, the head of state emphasized that the United States wants to impose a permanent agenda of war and military threats and psychological warfare against the country. For this reason, he called on the Venezuelan people to have nerves of steel. Furthermore, the president affirmed that the Venezuelan people will continue to live in peace with a victorious spirit and in the construction of their own democratic model based on full liberties. On the other hand, the president invited the Caribbean parliamentarians to accompany the Venezuelan people to the more than 5,000 popular assemblies that will be held on November 1st and the 2nd to prepare the projects that will be chosen during the 4th National Popular Consultation in Venezuela, which will take place on November 23rd.
Ellos siempre, los supremacistas imperiales, son los buenos.
They always say that imperial supremacists are the good guys, that they come to save us and bring democracy. Guatemala knows well how they brought democracy in 1954. Brazil knows well in 1964.
Bien lo sabe el Brasil, del gran João Goulart, 1964, la democracia que llevaron durante 20 años al Brasil.
The democracy they brought to Brazil for 20 years. Chile knows it well from Salvador Allende in 1973. The Dominican Republic knows it well from 1966. And the great Juan Bosch, Latin America knows it well.
Bien lo sabe Granada y Maurice Bichot, nuestro gran Maurice Bichot. Bastante democracia que llevaron.
Grenada doesn't know it well. They brought quite a lot of democracy. Haiti knows this well. Martyr. Our martyr Haiti, dismembered by more than 10 U.S. military interventions over the course of 100 years.
Intervenciones militares gringas a lo largo de 100 años.
The Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro emphasized that the distorted narrative of the United States about Venezuela is full of lies and false claims intended to deceive the sovereign peoples of the Caribbean.
Entonces esa película, hoy el mundo no acepta
Then there's
esa
that movie. Today, the world doesn't accept those movies from the worst of Hollywood. After all, Hollywood also has great actors and actresses, great producers, directors, and great movies. It's not the time to talk about cinema, but we could have a long conversation about Hollywood's contribution to universal culture, acting, and true cinema.
Siempre nos quieren imponer un relato, una narrativa. Hoy han elegido una narrativa absolutamente extravagante.
But they always want to impose a narrative. Today, they've chosen an absolutely extravagant narrative. I always try to discuss with my colleagues which concepts and words best describe each moment we have experienced. I can say that the narrative chosen by the US government against Venezuela,
El poder estadounidense contra la Venezuela digna, pacífica y bolivariana es una narrativa
a
extravagante.
dignified, peaceful and Bolivarian country, is extravagant, false and defamatory of the dignity of a decent, hard-working people who have achieved great things for their country, despite sanctions, and all the pressure that we have all come to know over the years.
Que todos conocemos a lo largo de estos años.
And in other news, Venezuelan government requested the Supreme Court of Justice Friday to revoke the citizenship of far-right-wing leader John Goycochea. In a statement, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, Justice and Peace said that the request responds to Goycochea's call for a foreign military invasion against Venezuela and the occupation of its territory. The Foreign Ministry and the Administrative Service for Identification, Migration and Foreigners will proceed to eliminate all documentation that identifies the far-right activist as Venezuelan. Goycochea is accused of persecuting and exterminating officials of various security forces of the National Armed Forces, as well as of carrying out mass murders of Venezuelans. And U.S. President Donald Trump denied allegations of an imminent attack on Venezuela, which had been published by some U.S. media outlets. After some U.S. outlets reported on alleged military preparations against the Latin American state, Trump stated that he was not considering attacks on Venezuela. The statements to the press were made on board the Air Force One, following the question which sought to confirm the rumors. In addition, the White House spokesperson, Anna Kelly, stated to the press that the unnamed sources didn't know what they were talking about, discrediting the outlets which had published the alleged presidential decision. For its part, Venezuela insists that the constant threats are part of the psychological war waged on the country as a form of pressure. And regarding these publications, the same Secretary of State of the United States, Marco Rubio, referred to them saying, "Your sources, who claim to have knowledge of the situation, deceive you to write a false story." Like this, we have our second break coming up. Before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Have a break, don't go away. Welcome back. In Brazil, Favela residents protested to demand justice for the victims of the recent police operations that left more than 120 dead in Rio de Janeiro. Protesters denounced the death policy of Governor Claudio Castro, who belongs to the same party as Jair Bolsonaro. Among the allegations are human rights violations, summary executions, and injured people. Furthermore, family members of the victims gathered in front of the regional government house to demand justice. The police action, announced as an operation to prevent the expansion of a criminal faction, became the deadliest operation in Brazil's history, including the death of 4 police officers last Tuesday. In Argentina, Guillermo Francos resigned this Friday as chief of staff and will be replaced by Manuela Adorni. The resignation comes due to persistent rumors about changes in the national cabinet. This is how the chief of ministers, Guillermo Francos, announced his resignation from office in a post on his ex-social media account. Addressed to President Javier Milei, who was having dinner in Olivos with former President Mauricio Macri. 4 minutes later, the president's office announced that the president had accepted his resignation and appointed presidential spokesman Manuel Adorni to replace him, who will take office on Monday. In Mexico, farmers expressed concern about the harvest of the traditional flower of the Day of the Dead in the face of climate change. For years on end, heavy rains, floods, and drought related to climate change have devastated the flower crops in the area of Xochimilco, south of Mexico City. The traditional cempasúchil, or marigold flower, is used on the Day of the Dead in Mexico, covering altars and cemeteries, guiding the souls of the dead to their living family members during the first 2 days of November. The agricultural sector continues to work to preserve native seeds, which together with specialized scientists seek to generate genetic diversity, in the hopes that these hardier strains can help farmers rebuild crops and protect Mexico's iconic bloom from the growing impacts of climate change. And in Honduras, following a meeting held between the General Coordination in the Central District and the Liberty and Refoundation Party, the order was given to call on all party members to mobilize to the capital starting on November 9th. Presidential candidate Tracy Moncada assured that the protest since November 9th will be permanent and that the national militancy will make a one-way trip to their hometowns. This comes after the leaking of audio recordings that reveal a boycott attack and destruction of popular sovereignty by imposing the results of the November 30th elections. Moncada added that they received an expert opinion from judicial investigators and criminalistic expert Jason Villamil, who assured them that the leaked audio recordings are authentic. And the 2025 Pan American Games in Chile were the award of the first medal on Saturday in the discipline of para-table tennis, which is being played in the city of Ringo in the O'Higgins region. On Saturday, there will be semifinals and finals in category 1 to 5 for both men and women, where athletes competing in wheelchairs will be there. The highest degree of disability is in Group 1 and the lowest in Group 5. The winners of Group 6 to 10 correspond to standing athletes with various degrees of physical disabilities will also be awarded. The 2025 Pan American Youth Games in Chile bring together nearly 1,000 athletes from 27 countries and will conclude on Sunday, November 9th. Mexicans honor the souls of their departed loved ones with vigils and altars decorated with flowers, food, and photographs on the Day of the Dead. Families gather to pray and bring offerings in memory of their loved ones. They also typically decorate graves, light candles, and place the deceased's favorite food to reconnect with those who have passed away. Many Mexican towns seek to continue preserving the essence of their traditions, as these celebrations in popular areas have been marked in recent years by tourism and commercialization. And All Saints' Day will be celebrated in Guatemala, where giant kite flying, a World Heritage Site, will fill the skies of the department of Zacatepeques with color and culture. Guatemalan tradition dictates that kite flying should take place over cemeteries in order to scare away evil spirits and enable the dead to rest in peace. The Zumpango Soccer Field and the General Cemetery of Santiago Zacatepeques will be the meeting places from the early hours of the morning to exhibit the work done by children, youth, and adults. The technique of making giant kite was declared intangible cultural heritage of the nation in 2022, honoring a tradition deeply rooted in the identity and community fabric of Guatemala. Meanwhile, in the Philippines, millions of citizens gathered this Saturday in Manila to participate in a traditional visit to the graves of their loved ones on All Saints' Day. They placed flowers and candles on the graves of their loved ones to honor their memory. For generations, All Saints' Day has served as a family gathering for relatives who faithfully guard the graves of their deceased loved ones. We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thanks for watching.